Alright, so we're going to start the project, and you have this lamp startup file. That's what we're going to start with. I made a new project and drop that into the scenes folder. Now I can open it. There it is. And we're kind of creeping and crawling a little bit. Alright, so on this file here, there's a bit of a setup. There's this eye that's on this layer here, and I can turn the eye off and turn the claw on, just like that. Okay, and if I go to the outliner, you'll see that most of the parts have been organized. Oops. Okay, so there's lots of stuff here that if you did have an actual model and all that stuff done, that you'd be able to go from there. Now, one thing that I did, if you see all the stuff is like below the grid, we always like to start stuff on the grid, okay? It's just disorienting to have it like that. So I'm just going to grab all the pieces here, including this little 3D texture. I'm going to group it and call it entire claw. Oops. Entire mech. There we go. Okay, now its pivots here, so I'm just going to move it up. And there we go. So we're right there. All right. And we can just verify that from the side view. I like to be pretty exact when I get this stuff in here. Yeah, I can come up just a tad bit more. Okay, one thing I can do to make sure it is exact is I'm going to hold down D and V. I'll zoom in so you can see it, D and V, and then just middle click and drag around here, and you'll see how it's snapping to these points. Now I can hold down, let go of D and V, hold down X, and just grab this green arrow. That'll snap it vertically. Okay, so that's good. Alright, so I'm just going to go back to, and just hold down DX and just put the pivot right there. D, remember, is for pivot, and X is for snapping to grid. So I'm just snapping it right to the very bottom of this thing. Okay, so let's talk about the controls of this thing so you get an understanding of what's going to be happening. So this is just a regular like lamp slash claw thing that you might have on your desk. Standard piece of equipment. But if we look underneath, we have these little hatches here. And if I were to rotate this off, you'll see there's a wheel hidden underneath. Okay, so one of our controls that we're going to have is this little latch here will actually be able to go up a little bit and then rotate over to the side. And then these wheels will be able to pop down for our use. Oops, I forgot the rest of the wheel. There it is. Okay, now it's not important that I don't have anything up there because unless this thing like flips over, it's not a big deal. So this is just going to pop down, and then from this view you'll be able to see that. Okay, so that's going to happen all over this entire thing because I have, if you look at the wheels and wireframe, I have 4 of those that are going to happen. Okay, so that's starting from the bottom. We're going to have those. This base here will be allowed to swivel. Okay, which is going to obviously, that's connected to that. This here will also be able to swivel or rotate. This is stationary. This guy is stuck here, but this ball will be able to rotate pretty freely in 360 degrees. Well, not all the way 360 because they'll get stuck hitting this thing. But pretty able to move around. Okay. Then we have, this is going to be connected to that. This is just a ball still connected to that. And then zooming in on all of these pieces here, this piece right here, oops, get in here. This piece right here will be able to rotate, which will rotate this thing, and we'll have the same kind of setup here. That this will be able to rotate, which will rotate the arm. This will be able to rotate, which will rotate that. Okay? And we're just going to do a very, very basic setup on this. Okay? And then if we switch the claw off, let's turn the eye on, we have this eye, which has pretty much the same controls. If you look, we have this shape here that we can move around. Well, on the eye, we have the same thing. We have this shape that can move around, but then we also have the eye, which can look at stuff. So basically, we're just going to do an aim constraint. And the whole purpose of having that is just so you can see some of the functionality of it. We can also set this thing up so that we can have the eye kind of blink too, in a very, very primitive way, but it'll work. Okay, so we also have the ability to switch between those. Alright, so we're going to start off with the claw. That's the more complex one. And then we'll just fit the eye stuff in there. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is just create some sort of shape for the bottom here. Alright, and you can just go to NURB Circle. I've talked about these. I'm not going to go into great detail about which one you want to use, but just we have to create some sort of shape down here that's going to be our master selection. Okay, so this is going to be our master selection for this entire piece. So if I wanted to move him, I would be able to grab this and move this around and move him. And then I would have a bunch of controls over here that would control things like the wheels popping out, control things like the eye or the claw being on there. Okay, so this is going to be my master controller. So I'm going to label it Master Controller. And if I wanted to, I could get a little bit fancy in the design. Let's say I made this 12, and I just grab some of these points and just went like that. Okay, that's fancy. I could also draw stuff in Illustrator, export it out from Illustrator as a Illustrator 8 file, and then bring that into Maya too. So if I decided I wanted to do something like that, I could. Alright, so there's my shape. I'm going to freeze the transforms on it, so it gets back to defaults. I'm going to delete the history on it. I'm going to center pivot it. Okay, so everything's good there. And I'm going to go to Add Attributes, and I know that one of the controls that I'm going to need is Wheels Out. Okay, so Wheels Out. And I'm going to start this at 0, and we'll just go to 10, and the default's going to be 0. Alright, so what that's going to do is we have this. Oops. Let me delete that attribute because I wanted to have my little separator. Add attribute, couple underscores. There we go. And then Wheels Out. 0, 10, 0. No big deal. Close. There we go. Alright, so what we want to do is be able to click here, drag with the middle mouse, and have that entire operation I described earlier, these things popping up and scooting over, and then the wheels popping out, all happen within that 0 to 1. And then when we go back from 10 to 0, the wheels go back in, these things slide in, back down to place. Okay, no big deal. Alright, so you'll notice the pivots for these are all at the center. Okay, that was done intentionally so that as I rotate these, you see how they all rotate right from the center, and it makes it much easier to be able to do something like this. Okay, so we're going to just set this stuff up. I'm going to just call these things, I'm going to go up here to my renaming. Okay, it typically looks like this. Switch it to rename, and I'm just going to call these wheel covers _1. Hate when it does that. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Whatever. So they have names. That's all that matters. So let's go to animation, set driven key set. Okay. And these little slots are going to be our driven. That's what's going to be controlled. That's what's going to be moved. And this guy here, our wheels out, is going to be our driver. That's what's going to control the movement of those things. Okay. So the bottom things are going to be all of these. We're going to set up the translate Y and the rotate Y. Okay, because the wheel covers are going to come up and then they're going to rotate. Okay, and you're never going to even see that unless you're underneath looking at it, but it's just something I want set up just, for fun. So master controller wheels out is highlighted. All 4 of these, translate Y, rotate Y, are all selected. Wheels out is set to 0. Everything's highlighted still. I hit key. Okay. So now I'm going to go to, let's say, 2. And at 2, that's when this thing, these things, are going to move up slightly. Okay. So I'm just going to raise it up a little bit. I'm going to zoom in too, just to make sure I would actually have the clearance. Right there looks like a good amount. Just maybe not right there. The wheel is poking through a little bit. Okay, so right there looks good. So we'll key it. I'll grab my master controller again. We'll go to 4. I'll grab these pieces again. I'll rotate it. Doesn't matter which way you rotate it. I like the counterclockwise to open. That's good. We'll key it again. And so now if we grab the master controller and we scoot back, you can see the little animation we have. From 0 to 2, it pops up. And then from 2 to 4, it slides over. Okay. So I'm going to set this back to 4. And I'm going to grab these guys. I'm just going to grab a piece on each one. And then hit my up arrow until I grabbed everything. I can't hit the up arrow too many times, otherwise I'll start grabbing the entire mech here, and I don't want to do that. So I'm just grabbing a piece of each of these. Wireframe, up, up, up. That looks good. Let me just go to the outliner and see what I have. I do have a wheel group. I can just grab the wheel group from here also. That makes much more sense. Okay. Alright, so I have my wheel group. And I'm going to, you see some of these have like, if I go to my rotation, you see the rotation is like way up here. I don't want the rotation to be way up there. I want the rotation to be down further, so I'm just going to center pivot each one of these. That's fine. And I'm also going to freeze their transforms before I do this. You see this one has a rotation Y of 90. I don't want that. Okay, and that was just for the setup. So I'm going to freeze the transforms. That resets everything. Good. Happiness. I'll even take the pivot for this. I'm going to slide the pivot up. So I hold down D, and just grab that green arrow, and just slide it till it's at the top. There we go. And that does it for all of them. You see all of them are at the top now. Okay, so now I can load these into the driven, highlight them, do what I want with their translate Y, because that's the one that's going to be moving, just translate Y down. And we'll set a key, because our master controller is at 4. These wheels are stuck inside, so I'm going to hit key. Then we'll set this to 10. And let me open that back up again. Wheels. There we go. We'll pull this down like so. And then we'll set that aside, go back to this, and hit key. Okay. So now if we go back to the master controller, go back to wheels out, middle drag, you see they go in, latches close, and they slide shut. So there we go. Okay. Now if you look, you'll see that this thing just barely clears this. All right. I could actually go in here, scoot this aside. And let me see how much clearance I have first. Let's rewind this back to 0. I don't have a whole lot of clearance, but I do have a little bit more movement that I'm just going to click on these wheels. I'm going to hit F8, go to a front view, and I'm just going to marquee the top row of points here. And then just pull it up. Okay, you'll see that it's going to start to poke through. I don't want to poke through, so I'm just going to go slightly before it starts poking through. Okay, and I may not have had any room to do that, actually. We'll see. Okay, so now I'll grab this, wheels out. There they go. Okay, and you'll see that yes, they do indeed not cover all the way in there, which is another great thing about set driven, because if it was a real problem, I'm not going to see it from this angle, so we're not going to worry about it. But if it was a real problem, I could actually grab these points right here, and I could load these as the driven. Okay, and I could say as this thing is coming out that these things actually go up. And I'm going to do it just so you can see it, because I think it's important that you kind of get a exposure to lots of different types of rigging things, because a lot of it is just, you know, now I'm running into this issue, how do I fix it? Now I'm running into this issue, how do I fix it? So let me grab all these. I'm going to load those as my drivens, highlight them. It's their Y value, that's their up and down. So I'm going to grab this, and let's set this to, let's set to 6. Okay, because at 6 we're coming down. And then I can grab these and pull it up. And again, I pull it up until it starts to poke through. Okay, and a little bit less right there. Oops. I did a bad thing. Let me undo. There we go. I have to key it at 6 first. There we go. Then set it to 10. Then grab these. Then pull it up. Okay, now you see how it's sticking inside there. And then I can key it again. So now we'll test it out. Oops. And middle drag. You can see that those things are stretching out. Okay, so there's lots of different things that we can set up using a set driven. Okay, so don't ever be afraid to just say, you know what, I want to add this feature to it. How can I do that? And then you just add that in there and test it out and see if it works. If it doesn't work, you can always grab these things here, come over to this. You see the yellow, that means there's a set driven on it. So I could highlight it and remove that if I wanted to. Okay. That's only showing it for one. I'd actually have to grab this guy, do it, this guy, do it, that guy, do it. Okay. Now this is all something too that if I go to my graph editor and I highlight all my points, I can see all of these. Now I don't like to do any set drivens with splines on the starts and the ends because it doesn't look natural. So I'm just going to make that linear. Okay. So I'm also going to do the same thing for the wheels. I'm going to grab the wheels, frame it, and make that linear. Because if I want to add any transition in there, I'll add it to my set driven, and then my set driven will have all the stuff. Okay. So I'm also going to grab the base pieces here, those little latch pieces, which it's easier to select if I just reset that. There we go. And I'll grab that and make it linear this way. Grab the translate Ys and make that linear that way. Okay. So now we can close all these windows and test it out just to make sure everything's still working. So let's see. I'll zoom in on one of these just so you can see it better. And I'll turn wireframe on so you can see it better. So it pops up, slides over, wheel comes out. Beautiful. Beautiful. Alright. So let's save this as lamp rigging 01. Okay. So that's that part here. Now this part there, we're going to do this arm first, and we'll come back and add this rotational stuff to it. We're going to do what's called an IK handle. We've used IK spline before, but we're going to use an IK handle this time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some joins. So I'm going to go to my locator here, and this is just a quick way to line up some locators, because we need this locator to be at the exact center of this thing. Okay. So I'm just going to duplicate this locator several times Come on. Move it, Shift D, move it, Shift D, there we go. So I'm just going to make several locators and then we'll position them. Alright, I don't care about the scale right now. We're not going to do anything with them except for use it for placement. So this one is going to be positioned at the exact center of this thing. So, okay, so I click this, I shift click this, and I go to Modify, Snap Align Objects, Align Objects, let's go midpoint, X, Y, Z, last selected object. Okay, so that guy, if we look really close, inside here, and I change my background color, there you go. You can see the locator is now centered at the center of that. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing with this one. And I actually created a button. So if you go to Align Objects, you set it up once, hold Control Shift, and you just go to the item. It'll add it to your shelf, which is right here. So I can just click the button now, and it'll go right there. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I have this ball. I have to grab the item that's going to be centered on. That's the item there. Okay. So this locator first, shift click that, click the button. Okay, now this one, because I have this little rod sticking out, as you can see the center is not the center. So I'll have to manually adjust that one. So that's fine. We'll adjust that one manually. Okay, and then this guy, he's going to be at the center of this. And then this guy, let me just grab these and scoot them over so it's easier to select. And this guy will be at the center of this. And then this guy will be at the center of this. There we go. And this guy will be at the tip of that. So I'm just going to hold down, go to the Move tool, hold down V, and just try to snap it. Oops. Snap it to the end of that. There we go. Okay, that one's placement doesn't really matter. Okay, so let me just verify I have stuff in the right spot. It looks good. This guy, is it meant to move? That's all locked into this, which is fine. Yep, that's good. Okay, so now let's move this guy manually. Okay, now here's how we can do some of this stuff manually. If we look at this rig, you can see the you can see how everything's kind of lined up. This one's pretty much straight on, so that's fine. If I take this sphere here and I look at where its center point is, okay, its center point is actually in the exact spot that I need this locator to be. All right. So if I go to modify, sorry, not modify, display, transform display, selection handles. Oops, not for that guy. For this ball. Transform display, selection handles. What I get is this little black thing right here. Okay. So what I can do is take my locator, hold down V for the point snap, and snap it right to that selection handle. So now it's centered in the middle of that. So I can grab the object. Now I'm grabbing both because mine, I don't want it on the locator, and I'm just turning it off. Okay, so now it's centered. All right, I'm also going to put a locator, now that I have them in the spots that are most commonly going to be used. I'm also going to put one at the center of this, okay, because this is going to be kind of like the center piece of the thing. And oops. Okay, and one thing that I forgot to mention, this thing will be able to rotate like that. Okay, so that will be something that it can do. So let's go and grab this. Let's go and grab this ring. And here's our button. There we go. Alright, so now that we have all of these locators in place, let me just verify this guy's in the right spot. Yep, I was just seeing the intersection here look funky, but that's right. Alright. So what we're going to do is this setup here, we're just going to set this one up, make sure it works, and then we can duplicate it around to the other pieces and then do all of our animation stuff. Okay, so I'm going to set up the joints for this guy and then duplicate it around for all these other ones. So all this other stuff here, there, I'm just marking it. Actually did group that, okay. So what I'm going to do is I click on one piece and hit the up arrow, which was good hindsight. And I have these extra claws. I'm just going to delete the extra claws, okay. So that way when I'm done with this one, all I have to do is grab all these pieces, make sure they're connected correctly, and then I can just duplicate and rotate the whole structure around. Okay. All right. So let's look at some of the tools that we're going to be using and delete this extra locator. So I'm going to go to the skeleton tool, joint tool, and we have a structure like this. We have a joint here, we have a joint here, we have a joint here, we have a joint there, let's say. Okay, that's the main structure. And what we want to do is we want to use this IK handle tool. Alright, and this is a rotate plane, so I went to the option box and hit rotate plane solver. And what I want to do is click here, click there, and what we can do is now we can grab this and we have pretty much like free reign over this thing. Okay, we can move it wherever we need to kind of line this up to what we are, where we want this thing positioned. Okay, and then we can come back to this guy and we should be able to rotate him around to get that set up. Okay, so that's what we're going to try to set up inside here to allow us to do that. Now you'll notice that this thing, as I go to rotate, is kind of on this funky plane. Okay, it's not perfectly lined up the way that this guy is, so we'll have to fix some of the stuff that's over there. Okay, and then we also are going to have this little mini setup right there, a couple joints. All right, so we'll get that too. All right, but I just wanted you to see it before we actually get into it. So I'm going to go to show polygons to hide the polygons. You'll see I have some NURBS pieces down here too. Just ignore those. And I'm going to go to my joint tool, and I'm going to hold down V and click here. There's my root. Still holding V, click there. Still holding V, click here. I may need to toggle my stuff back on for a minute just so I can make sure I grab the right stuff. Yes. Okay. So I want to go down to this here and leave it there. So I'm just hit enter. Okay, I'll get to the rest of this, but I just want to have that set up first. Okay, so show polygons. The joints are way too big, so I can go to display, animation, joint size, shrink it down to 0.1. Much better. Now we can actually see our stuff. Okay, and then what we need to do is what I said earlier, which is align these joints. Okay, because if I took this, you can see the angle that this joint is rotating on. It needs to be perfectly flat. It needs to be, and it's going to ruin the rest of the joint structure, but it needs to be like that. Okay, so I'm just undo that. Alright, so I can't just go through and rotate this joint. I can't just say, rotate this joint back like that, because it gives me a rotation here, which we don't want. We want everything to be zeroed out. And also, if you look close, it moved the other joints out of place. Okay, so I'm not going to do that. I'm leave it where it was originally positioned for all of these. And then what we're going to do is we're going to hit F8, which is component mode. And then up here, I'm going to turn the point selection off and turn this question mark on. Okay, and the question mark, if I right click, allows me to adjust local rotation axes. That's what it is. That's what's off. So I just marquee that one, and then I can rotate this to get it lined up. Okay, now it only took 2 seconds to do that. Okay, so don't be, discouraged or try to do too much. It's very important though that you grab just that bar going around. If I were to grab here and started rotating, you can see that this is now kind of off. Hit undo. So I want to make sure I grab the thing here and rotate it. Now I'm also looking at, let me switch my view and hit the plus sign. If you look at this red line, which is yellow when I go over it, it looks like a little bit of stair stepping is occurring here. And it's hard to see probably on mine. Maybe I'll switch to black and turn my grid off. There you go. That's much better. You can definitely see the stair stepping in here. That's what we're trying to get rid of. So I just want to rotate it slightly until that stair stepping goes away. Okay. And it might even be rotating it way off and then coming back and rotating it slightly. Okay. And it might even be going into here. I hit the Control A. And as I rotate this, you can see this rotate axis is coming up. So I might even be going in here and just typing in 3.5. 90.5. We don't want to have to do that. Okay, I'm just going to hit the plus sign to make this bigger. I've never had to do that. There we go. But sometimes you just have to kind of jar things around, move it crazy, and then kind of pull it back into frame. Okay, even pulling out further away from this gives you a little more refinement. Go back to where I actually had it good. There we go. Okay, so it might take, you know, a couple tries on that one just to get it perfect, but eventually you will. Okay, so that one we need like this. This one I don't care about. It should be all set. This one should be all set. This guy here needs to be rotated as well, because this one is going to be the one that's going to rotate this whole band around. So let me go to the front view, and this one's going to be rotated perfectly in alignment with this bar. So if I look at this red line here, let me make this bigger. This red line here, that should line up perfectly with this bar. It's almost there, almost there. There we go. Okay, I think that's good. The joint seems to be a little bit off though. Somehow it snapped to something else and not this thing. So let me hit F8, click on this joint, hold down V, and snap it right on top of it. So somehow it didn't snap right to this, it snapped to something else. It's odd. Back to my front view, back to F8, grab that, rotate, and just make sure I'm still lined up, which I am. I'm perfectly lined up. Oops. And that should be good there too. Okay, good. You can see why, switching between the different background colors can definitely help kind of see some of the stuff, because it's hard to see the colors in some of these things as we're in wireframe. You know, it just makes it a bit easier. Also, going to show polygons and turning some of those off definitely helps. Alright, so now that we have this set up, okay, all my joints right now are at 0. The translates now aren't, but the rotates are. Okay, and you could also, this is called walking the joint line, is if I click on one of the joints and I use the up and down arrows, I'm basically walking up and down the joints. Okay. Alright, so that should be good. Alright, so now I'm going to start parenting things to these joints. Okay, so the base and all these wheels. So here's the base. Oops, that's it. Just the base. Let's see, ball joint. Okay, those are my turning pieces here. So all of these here, those two, this guy. I'm just looking to see if I wanted, I think it might be more interesting if I left this as a solid and oops, maybe let this rotate with that. That might be just a bit more interesting to look at. I think we'll do that. We'll try it and see. If not, we can always undo that. Alright, so I'm going to take the center piece here. So the center pieces are going to be stationary with this. These outside pieces are going to rotate with that. So a slight modification to our original design, no big deal. Alright, so all of these here, not the base yet, we'll get to the base. All of these pieces here are going to be parented to this joint. Okay, so I grabbed, just so we can see it, this inside piece, I grabbed this arm, and I grabbed this, and I'm just going to shift click the joint and hit P to parent it. And as we do that, you'll see that they come out of this grouping and they're going down to this joint structure grouping, which we will name later. Okay, so that's good. So now let's grab the outside piece, this arm, and this piece here. Okay, and we're going to shift click that joint and then hit P to parent that. Then we're going to grab the ball, this thing, and this. Yep, that's right. We're going to shift click that joint. So I just shift click right in the middle. Okay, and it selects this joint way back here. Hit P to parent. Okay. And then we're going to grab this, the stuff up here, and parent it to that. Okay. So we have to set up the joint structure for this arm, and then we'll do that. All right. So let's go to show polygons. Let me shrink these locators down a bit just so we can see them a little bit clearer. There we go. Okay. And we'll go to joint tool. I'm going to hold down V, click here, click here, click here, click there, enter. Okay. Now, like I said before, these two want to be connected, okay, because they're all going to move together. So we did them separately so that we can kind of focus on one part at a time. But to bring them back to being connected, all I have to do is click this one, shift click that one, and hit P, and you'll see that now they're connected. And that's what we want. Okay. And this guy should be set up perfectly. I'm just going to go to the front or the side view and just make sure that his blue is sticking straight up in the air, and it is. It's not off to the side or anything. Okay. Alright, so now let's go through and parent this stuff. So again, the outside ones are going to be rotating ones on, that's on the other ones, and this one it's going to be this. Okay, because these ones can't rotate because we have these, like, you know, other pieces here. That really wouldn't make sense. So that and this is going to be parented to that. Oops, and this piece are going to be parented to this joint as well. Okay, so then we'll have this rotator, this arm, these two side pieces will be parented to that joint. And this rotator, this arm, it's going to be hard to select it, so you just have to find a spot. There we go. Grab that, parent. Okay. Alright, so now let's see if what we have highlighted. So I just marquee this bottom joint, and it goes through and selects everything. Okay, so I have everything here. I need to parent this stuff in, because right now it's not parented in. So I'm just going to grab this. Here, shift click this joint and parent it to that. Okay, because when I grab this one and rotate it, that's what we're going to have. Okay. So now if we look at this, the entire thing gets highlighted when I select the bottom. That's what we should have. And then I'm going to create one more joint down here that's going to be my main root joint. Okay, this one is not going to move. It's just going to be like the main piece that everything else gets parented to. So new joint, there we go, joint tool. I'll just put it right here at the origin. Perfect. Enter. And again, I'll just take this, shift click that, and parent it to it. Okay. And then all this other stuff, I go to the outliner. the rest of this mech should be just those pieces. So it should be this. Here's all the wheel covers. The eye parts we'll get to. The claw stuff is all set up. The wheel pieces here. 3, 4. And I shift click this bottom joint and hit P to parent it. Okay. So now if I click on this just to test it out, I always like to test things out as I go. Okay. You'll see how this kind of broke a bit. My wheels are actually gone. Where did my wheels go? No, they're way down there now. Okay. So this is just one of those things that can happen because we started parenting things in here. And it's very odd that it moved it so much. But it's not a big deal to fix. Okay. So all we have to do is grab these pieces, go to the graph editor, and we're looking at just the translate Y's. The rotate Y's look like they're right. It's just the translate Y's that look like they're the problem. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to grab the whole graph, and we're just going to pull it up. Okay. And we have to know where we're at. Right now, we're at 0, so these things should be flat against the inside. Okay, so I'm grabbing again just the translate Y's, marking it, and then just middle dragging with shift to move it straight up until it's flush. And if you look, it's flush. Okay. I'll do the same thing with my wheel groups. So I'm going to grab from my outliner, grab my wheel groups. I just grabbed one, come over here and hit F, and it found it for me. Grab this, hold down Shift, and just keep dragging it up until it gets stuck inside the thing. Okay, because at 0, those things should be stuck inside there. Okay. Ooh, too much. There we go. Okay, now let's go here, and we'll test it out. This drops. All right, the wheel's good. It looks like this is dropping the opposite way we want it to go. Okay. So let's go back to here. Let's go back to here and grab these pieces. Grab the translate Y, translate Y, translate Y. There we go. Now we're going to grab the second half of this, which is its movement, right? So this is where it started at 0, it moved out, and then it stayed there. So we just have to move this in the opposite direction. And yours might be a little bit different than mine. So don't be, thinking it's going to look exactly like mine. You just have to find your own little tweak that you have to do to it to get it to work. But you can see how, once something's set up, it's set up, and all we have to do is kind of go through and tweak it. See, I'm actually inside now. There we go. Let's say something like that. All right. And we'll test it out again. This, that. There we go. Perfect. Okay. So you see, even though we set it up, some stuff changed. We can always go back and modify these things. So don't think that we're locked in at any point. If we wanted to add something and that changes something else, we can always fix it. Okay. Not always, but most of the time. All right. So I'm gonna put my wheels away. We're good. All right. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to hide my locators. So show locators goodbye. We don't need to see those. Even the polygons, I can hide those. So I don't really need to see those. Okay, I just need to know what they're doing. I'll even show NURBS to hide that wheel stuff. Okay, so this thing here is going to be a rotator that's just going to go like this. From here to there is going to be IK handle stuff. So let's go to skeleton, IK handle tool, rotate plane, yes. We're going to click on this joint. We're going to click on that joint. Okay. And if I go back to show polygons, and test this out just so you can see that I can grab this IK handle, this little manipulator that's now here, and move this around. Right, you can see the kind of stuff that I can get it to do. Yeah, that one can't move. It was verifying the rig. Okay. So perfect. So I'm just going to undo that movement. Alright, now one thing I want to have is if I grab this and I move it down here and I say, whoops, I don't want that there. I want that to go back to where it was. I can't zero this out. I zero it out, it goes back down here. Okay? And it might be too far past for me to undo it. So what we have to do is set up a different control here so that I never ever grab the actual IK handle tool. I always grab something else. I always grab some other object that allows me to do this. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I have the IK handle here selected. I'm going to group it to itself. Now the pivot's down here, so I'm going to put the pivot back on the joint by holding DV, middle mouse button clicking and dragging, and there it is. Okay, so now I have basically a group with its stuff zeroed out. I can call it arm control. Okay, and I'm just going to go to display, transform display, selection handle. Okay, and then I can grab this IK, hold control, hit H, that hides the IK handle tool. And so I don't see the IK, but I do see, if I look close, there's a little plus sign right here. And if I marquee this plus sign, see what I get is that arm control. And now I can go through and move this around. Okay? Without having to worry about, oops, I moved it in the wrong spot. Okay, I just reset these to 0 and it goes back to the beginning. Okay? So we have that. Cool. Now, one thing that's going to do is as I grab this and try to rotate it, you can see that this is not rotating nicely with this. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this arm control, I'm going to shift click this and parent it. Okay? So now when I grab this and rotate, you see how I can rotate this arm control around. Now, we have translates here. We're never using the translates for joints because it does that. Okay, I'm only using rotation, so I'm not even concerned about these being here. Okay, this eventually we can grab and hide, but more than likely we're going to create another control here that we can use to rotate this around. We can throw it on here, we can throw it on whatever. Okay. All right, we can still grab this and rotate it and move it however we'd like to. Perfect. Okay. All right. So now we can go through and set the rest of this up. Okay, so these joints should all be set up. Good, good, good. And so what I need to do is I need to grab these pieces here. I'm going to grab this joint first. Oops. And this piece should be on that joint. So let's parent it to that. There we go. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this. Now if I duplicate this one and rotate it around, you see how it's, it's not going to work. But if I take this group and I duplicate it around, I'm going to get duplicates of this, but I can always hide those. Okay, or not hide them, but delete them. All right, so now that this joint structure is set up here, perfect, I can duplicate this and rotate this around however many degrees, let's say. I had 5 copies there, I believe. So that would be 72. Shifty, shifty, shifty. Perfect. Okay. Now I have, if you look here, a bunch of joints hanging out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this, this, and this. I'm going to hit Shift P, and that unparents that. Okay. So then what I can do is go through and unparent all these other little pieces that are hanging out here too. So I'm just going to unparent all this. It might even be even easier to do this from the outliner. Okay, now that I have these things separated, oops, that's 9, that's 5, there we go. So there are the new joint structures here. So basically what I want to do is I want to get rid of, not that one, the ones that are inside here. There they are. So here's, I clicked on one of these pieces, came in here and hit F. Oops. And it took me to this little joint 10, these pieces here. Okay. So I want to delete these joints. I can't delete those joints yet because I have to get those pieces of geometry off first. Okay, so I can just grab the pieces of geometry, Shift P. Grab the pieces of geometry, Shift P. Grab the piece of geometry, Shift P. Grab the piece of geometry, Shift P. Then I can grab these joints and delete them. Okay, they're not necessary. But now I have all these other things that are just kind of hanging out. That's fine, because all of these things are going to be parented to this one joint here. Okay. Except for these rings. I don't need, there's like a bunch of rings right here. I don't need any of the rings, so I can just grab the rings. That's it. And delete them. And then all of these braces, I'm just going to shift select this joint, parent it to that. Good. And then you see how I have this set up there. Then I'm going to grab each one of these joints here, shift click this joint, and hit P to parent it. Okay, so now I have this little joint structure set up perfectly with how everything should be moving around. You can see I can rotate this, I can grab this and rotate it, and so on. Okay, everything looks wonderful. Okay, so it might take you some rewatching of that part just to get it exactly right, but save often, save a couple times just to make sure you have it set up correctly. But the point of this one is that I should be able to grab this joint here, grab everything. Hit the down arrow, so I grab the next joint, which is this little star one here. You see how that's a little star shape? That star one has everything here down. And then if I grab these middle ones, you see how I grab just those pieces. So think of it in a way that makes sense to you to say, okay, well, if I grab this joint, that's grabbing all of these pieces that are right here. And then if I grab these joints, that's just going to grab the arm pieces that are going to move. This is going to grab just the arm pieces that are going to move. Okay? Even if it helps to look at the mechanics of it, look at your own arm, whatever it takes, you'll get it. Okay? And then this guy here I should be able to grab. Oops. Yeah, that's right. And rotate like that. Okay? So, and just back to 0. Alright, so that should be pretty good. Alright, so let me save as again. It's always good to save incrementally because you never know when you're just going to kind of mess something up. Okay, so we have this. We can rotate that. Oops. We can grab the IK, move this. And now we just have to have a setup here for manipulating the claw itself. Okay, and I like to do that here. Okay, I like to create a control here so that if the claw is reaching down and going to pick something up, like right there or whatever, that I have controls on the claw right there. I don't have to worry about any other locations. Alright, so we're going to create a NURB circle. I'm going to hold down V, snap it right to this thing here. And I'm just going to go on the front view and just kind of line this up sideways. Oops. Make sure I'm right on that line. Not that it's going to matter. I just OCD wants to kick in and set it up there. Good. Okay. So that's good. I'm going to freeze the transforms on it. So that resets everything. Claw, controls. Perfect. So I'm going to grab my IK handle, shift click this guy, and just P to parent it. Okay. Now when I parented it to this, what's going to happen is you'll see is that now when I rotate this, that doesn't work anymore, okay? Because I parented it to the claw here. So what I have to do also is click this and parent it to that. Okay, and I'm just, always go through and check your stuff and make sure it's still working and make sure that you're still frozen, because if you look at this, we're not frozen anymore. So I have to go back and freeze the transforms again, and there we go. Okay, so don't be afraid just to kind of, experiment with some of this stuff and see. And I have a selection handle way out here. I'm just going to hide. So display, transform, selection handle. Where are you coming from? Oh, it's from the arm control. There we go. Hide that guy. Good. Okay. So now we have this. We're never going to rotate this thing here. This is simply for movement. Okay. So that's what we want to happen with this guy, is just movement. And this guy here will be used for rotation. So he'll still be set up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do some set drivens on these guys here, the claws. Okay. There's many ways to set these things up. Ideally, we want to have individual controls, and we want to have kind of like some master controls. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to name these things. So let's call this base. I'm going to start at the top here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that'll be 4. And then this guy will be mid 4. And this guy will be top 4. And then this guy, not really important, so I'm not even going to label him. Okay. So then we'll do the same thing here. Base 3. Mid 3, top 3. Base 2, you see where this is going, mid 2, and top 2. And this will be base 1, mid 1, and top 1. This one. Okay. So that we have those labeled. Again, we'll save as. We're adding some stuff. We're changing things around. We always want to increment. All right. So then we have this guy here, which is our joint rotation. Okay, or joint claw rotation. All right, so that's good there. So now let's just do some modify add attributes here. A couple underscores, of course, to separate it. And then we'll do claw rotation. This one, basically it's going to be up for grabs. This thing could spin around 7,000 times. So we'll just leave it with no minimums, no maximums, default is 0. Add. And then let's do a couple other ones. What positions do we want the claws to be in? Okay, individually I want to have, you can't start an attribute with a number, which is kind of odd. But let's say 1 rotation. Or 1 bend, we'll call it that. 1 bend. We'll make it negative 10, 10, and 0. And then we'll call it 2 bend. Negative 10, 10, and 0. 3 bend. Negative 10, 10, and 0. 4 bend. Oops. Crap, the other one's wrong. So check on those. 5 bend. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we have the bends basically just them individually kind of flexing back and curling forward. We can also do tight pinch. Oops. 0, 10, and 0. We can do big grab, 0, 10, and 0. And whatever. I mean, we could do this all day long, come up with different names of these different items here. Okay, so these are going to be the minimum ones I want you to do, but don't be afraid to experiment and play around with some of them. All right, so let's do the first one, claw rotation. Okay, so claw rotation is just going to set up with this guy. We're just going to do a set, not a set driven, because I don't know what the minimum and maximums are going to be. I just want to do an expression. Okay, so this is claw rotation for rotate X. Okay, so I'm just going to go to this, doesn't matter which one, expressions, and that's called claw rotation dot rotate X. And it might be a little confusing because I also called this claw rotation here, but just go with it. Equals claw controls dot claw rotation. Shrinking box so we can see it. Hit create. It was a success. So now if I click on this and middle drag, you'll see that it's going to work. Now obviously this is a pretty slow movement. I don't want this to go from 0, take me that long all the way across the screen as I scrub to get that far. So I'm just going to put in a little multiplier here. So times 10. That's much better. Okay. So now I have a lot more, it's a lot more wider control in a smaller area. That's what we want. Okay, so that's all I had to do for that one. No big deal. The other ones aren't going to be expressions. They're just going to be set drivens. Okay, so we'll do this one bend. So I'm just going to grab these, and I'm going to go to animate, set driven key, set, and these guys are my drivens. They weren't loaded here. I just load them as the drivens. My driver is going to be this guy. For the entire part of this is going to be the driver. So one bend, there's my pieces. Now these are only bending in one direction, which is Z. Okay. Now if you look, I actually have a little bit of a odd thing happening here, is that as I rotate this in Z, you can see that this is rotating backwards. Okay. This guy here, as I rotate him this way, I want him to rotate that way. But he's not. He's rotating the other way. Okay, so I need to fix that. So again, I'm going to hit F8. I'm going to show polygons to turn those off, so I don't need to see them. And I'm going to click on the pieces here until I get to it. Base underscore 1, that's the one I want. Okay. Now if we look at this, my rotate X is facing up, rotate Y is this way, rotate Z is that way. Okay, so I'm going to go here. And there it is. So in this one, and yours might not be like this. Mine is like this. Yours might not be like this. In this one, if I rotate this around a little bit, the Z is actually off to the left side. Or down here, the Z is actually off to the right side. Okay? So what I have to do is spin this thing around 180 degrees. So let's do this the best way, which is make my Maya window maximized, is that I'm going to go to Command, New Tab, Mel. I have this rotate here that I just did. So rotate -R-OS, whatever. So I'm just going to set this thing up to be 180, right? So what's going to do is it's going to take whatever I have selected here, which is base underscore 1, and it's going to rotate that around 180 degrees. So I just hit Control Enter, and that's it. Okay. Now I'll most likely have to do that for this guy too, and I know that this Z sticking out is a problem, so I just highlight it, Control Enter that. Okay, this other Z that's sticking out is something else. That's claw, lower arm. I don't care about that. Okay, so make sure I grab the right one, which I did. There we go. Oops. Go to show polygons, make sure nothing's screwed up here, everything's good, wonderful. Hit F8 again to get out of there. Okay, and then just test this again. Now I grab the pieces, I rotate it, and you can see how all my pieces come right in. As I grab this rotation and rotate it in, they all come in together. They all go out together. That's what we should have, okay? I should have checked that beforehand, but that was no big deal. You just kind of move with it. All right, so these rotate X, or Z, rotate Z is what we're going to be doing. So I make sure on claw controls, my circle here, that this is all set to zeros, which it is. I make sure on my joints here, on the rotate Z's, that those are all set to zeros, and then I hit key. And then we go back to the claw control. We set our bend to -10. We grab these and rotate them backwards, like so. Okay, we may not ever have to get to this position, but it's always good to have a little bit backward movement on it. And key it. Then we grab this. We set this to +10. Grab our stuff, rotate it in, and then set another key. Okay, so now if we look at this, we have this kind of range of movement on it. Okay, so reset that to 0, and then we'll do the same thing for this. Okay, we test it first. Good. Load that as our driven. To bend, rotate Z. Everything's already zeroed out. Hit key. Okay, then I go to this. This is -10. This is going to rotate backwards. And this is just arbitrary. I could actually go in here and just do, you know, some fine tuning on these if I wanted to. Like that. And then key it. And then grab this again. Set this to +10. Grab these again. Rotate them in. And then I could give them little bits of tweaks in here as well. And key that. Okay. Good. Reset it back to 0. And then I do number 3. Check it again, make sure it's good. Yes, everything's rotating the correct way together. Load those as my driven. Highlight them. Make sure 3 bend is clicked. Make sure rotate Z is clicked. Everything is zeroed out. We hit key. Set this to, doesn't matter if you do -10 or +10 first. I just like to do -10 first. Rotate it back. Do a little bit of tweaking. There we go. Set a key. Set this to, hide my layers here. Set this to +10. Rotate these in a bit. Key it. Good. And always test it out, you know, before and after. Make sure everything's working correctly. Okay. By the time we're done with this, we'll be able to grab all of these and just go. Okay, and just do some movement on it. All right. Rotate Z, 4, test 4, good. Key it at 0, -10. And pay attention to how I'm selecting them in the set driven. I'm just kind of clicking and dragging. I'm not clicking. Just click and drag. Set a key here. And if you accidentally make a mistake and you don't change that to -10, well, no big deal. Just set it to whatever you're trying to set it to. Move it where you want it to be, just like keyframing, and hit key and it'll overwrite it. Okay. I'll do a mistake on this one. So load driven, highlight them, rotate Z, 5 bend. I'll key it here. I'll forget to set this to -10. Okay, so I didn't set this 5 bend to -10. And I'm going to go through and just reset this up. And then I hit key and I say, whoops, I just realized I never set this 5 bend to -10. Okay, so now my 0 is now stuck here. No big deal. Go to -10. That's where we wanted a -10. Set a key. Go back to 0, highlight these, reset that to 0, set a key. Okay, basically we're setting keyframes backwards in that case. Alright, then we just go to +10 and just reset it up. There we go. Okay, so now we have all 5 of these. They can go in and go out. Okay, and they're pretty close in how they're colliding here. So I might have to manually go through and tweak one of these a little bit more, a little bit less, which is why we have individual controls if we needed this type of control in here. But you can see how neat that is that we can do something like this. Okay, so let me just reset these to 0. Alright, tight pinch is going to be, he's kind of like these bottom pieces are moving more in one way, you'll see it. Right? But tight pinch, we're going to have all the joints. Okay, so I'm just going to go through and go boom, boom, boom. I switch my rotate tool off so it's easier to select. And I'm just shift clicking each one of these. And the hardest thing about this one is just going to be a little bit of OCD, making sure that we grabbed everything. So load driven, base 111, 222, 333, 444, 555. If one of those was 2, then I realized that I missed something and go back and reselect it. Rotate Z's, tight pinch, everything's zeroed out, key. Go to tight pinch, set it to 10. And then what I'm going to do is just go into the bases here. Oops, I don't think I grabbed the base on that one. There we go. I'm just going to pull these in like this. I'm going to grab the next row. I might be able to just mark key straight across. Success. Pull this up a little bit. Mark key straight across. Hold that up a little bit. Mark key straight across. Hold that in a little bit. Okay. So this is what a tight pinch is going to look like. We'll key that. Okay. And then we'll go back here. Wonderful. Reset that to 0. Big grab is pretty much, it's a modification of this one, but I'm just kind of rotating these tips in. Okay, I have everything selected still, everything's listed. I'll key it at 0. We'll go to 10. I'm going to take these first and just kind of pull these back a little bit more. And then these tips here are going to come in a little bit. And then these middle pieces there are going to come in a little bit. Okay, so it's like it's grabbing something big, I don't know. There we go. Okay. So now we can rotate it. We can tight pinch it, still rotate it, and screw light bulb. We can go into something like, let's say, big grab here, and then if we needed to tweak some of these individual ones, we can tweak the individual ones. Okay. It's breaking open a pistachio. something like that. All right, cool. And you could actually have controls for each individual piece here, each individual rotation if you wanted to. You could do that. Okay, so this is going to move this around, and then we still have our controls, we still have our rotation, everything's still working, and then the best part is we just reset this to 0, everything goes back to 0. Okay, we're not going to rotate this, so I'm just going to right click and lock and hide selected. We don't need to see that. I'm not going to scale it or turn the visibility on and off, so let's do the same thing. Visibility might need. Lock and hide selected on that. It's good. Good. Okay. Alright, so now we have this guy here. Oops. My other joint. There it is. I think I displayed a selection handle for that, so I'm just going to turn it off. There we go. So now I can move this around, and then I can do that stuff. Alright, so I just need to take this now and make it control that. So I'm just going to take this, shift-click the master control, and parent it. So now that I have this, I can move this wherever I need to. The wheels come out. Boop, there's the wheels. Grab this guy, move this where I need it to move. Adjust some of my pinchers. Rotate it around. Wonderful. And then I can, of course, zero all my stuff back out. It's already zeroed out. Wheels out. Good. Okay. One thing I need to do too with this is I need to make sure that all of these claws up here have all their set drivens with flat movements, or not flat, linear. Okay, because again, I don't want any easing in, easing out of any of this stuff. Okay, so graph editor. It's gonna be a lot of stuff in here, and this is what we should see is these coming into 0. At 0, you should just have a cluster of points at 0. If you don't, you can marquee them, type in 0, voila. Okay, so these and these, linear. This, linear. Okay. The only time I probably don't want that to be linear is on stuff like grab and pinch. Which even those, yeah, no, those are right. I'm sorry, not on grab and pinch, but on my bends. No, that's fine. We'll leave it like that. Everything's good. Alright, great. Wonderful. So let's save this as again. Number 4. Okay. So now let me pop my layers back up. And remember I have I in here somewhere. Show NURB surfaces. Okay. My layer for claw is not working anymore. Okay. So what I need to do is I need to create another control down here that allows me to choose whether I want claw or eye. So I'm just going to go to modify, add attributes. I'm going to say apparatus, 2 P's, ARATUS. This is going to be an enum, which is a list, green or blue. No, we're going to have claw or eye. Okay, okay, so now we have a list. Alright, so what I've done is I've gone ahead and rigged the eye. You can see what it's looking like. It's pretty simple, just a lot of the same stuff we've already done. So here is that positional locator, that aim constraint on the eye. Okay, here is the eye close. And then here is the claw or eye apparatus manipulator. Okay, and then of course I can move the eye just like I would the claw. Same thing here and there. Okay, so oops. So that's it. So I want to show you what I've set up, and you're just going to do it. Okay, so make NURB sphere on this eyelid area. Remember, we didn't delete the history. There's those 2 pieces that we would need to set up. So we just did set driven to control those 2 pieces moving. So this goes from 45 to 0. This goes from 320 to 360. And then on this guy, we've used the eye apparatus here and done a set driven on claw to turn the claw visibility on, and eye to turn the eye visibility on. And if you look in wireframe, you'll see what actually just disappears. Okay? So you see that I still have all these other pieces inside, which is fine. It still works and, you know, looks good. Obviously, we could have some more mechanics of, you know, how this is actually connected, but I didn't want to go too crazy on this one. Okay? So I'm just keyframing visibility. So I keyframe the visibility on and off. And then the same thing for those other pieces. I just set the set driven for claw so that when claw is selected, the visibility is on. And when claw is not selected, when I selected, the visibility is off. Okay? So just give it a go. Try it out. Play with it. You'll see. One more control I want to add in here, which is just this rotation here. Just that. Okay? I don't want to grab the joint because, again, I don't want to grab these things. So I'm just going to create another circle. I'll move it up to about there. Doesn't have to be exact, just, you know, somewhere in there. And then I'm just going to grab this and parent it to this main joint. And then I'm going to freeze the transforms. And then I'm just going to grab the circle, which is apparatus rotation. I can delete the history on this too. I'm going to shift click that joint and then just do a constrain orient on it. Oops. Odd. Let's try that again. Constrain orient. There we go. Okay. Now I've also locked in some of these things. If you look at this coming down here, originally I had this thing was kind of like wobbling off to the side because it was moving in the Z direction. So what I did was I just locked it. Just right clicked on the Z, lock and hide selected, whammo. So now it's not going to mess up. Okay. So as you go through, to kind of play with the model or play with the rig and see if you're liking the way that it's looking. You'll also notice that if we grab that main controller, we can actually scale this whole thing down and everything still works. So there's claw, there's eye, there's the wheels coming out. Okay, so this is just a really, really nice rig. It gives you just a lot of control over your stuff. And then to deliver this to someone, we would show joints to turn joints off so that joints aren't there. We'd also go through and hide some of our other stuff. We would hide locators, which I'm not really seeing, and I've kind of screwed myself by putting this thing here. Alright, let me save this. And I can't, there's locators, so I've turned locators off. So there it is. Alright, so there's your rig. So you're going to turn that guy in, make a little movie with him, moving around, switching, wiggling his parts, whatever. Alright, something nice, something interesting that shows off all of his controls, not just the, you know, 2 or 3 of them. I want to see all the controls. I want to see the wheels popping out. I want to see the claws moving. Okay?